Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story.
Hello, readers. If you've been following me and listening to the podcast for a while, then you know that I love checking out all of the upcoming new romance book releases for the month ahead so that I know exactly what I want to add to my TBR list. While I'd like to read everything, time and money is short, which is why I'm sharing my list of top 10 new romance book releases for November 2024 so that you know what to add to your TBR list as well. What's even better than knowing what to read, knowing that some of these new releases are available with your Kindle Unlimited subscription. If you don't have a Kindle Unlimited subscription yet, then this is definitely the month to get one. And what I love best about this month's list is that while I have a few new titles from some of my favorite romance authors, most are from authors that I've actually never read before, who I'm hoping might soon make my favorite author list. So we shall see, but I always love checking out new authors, again, in hopes that I'm going to find a new favorite. And then from my favorite romance tropes, enemies to lovers, to brothers best friends, to opposites attract, and romantasy and holiday romance, this book list has you covered for the best romance books worth reading this November, no matter what your interests are in the romance genre. For even more books to add to your reading list, of course, don't forget that you can always check out my upcoming releases page so that I keep up to date with all of the new releases for the rest of this year and actually well into 2025 already. I will include a link to that in the show notes. Plus, you can always also check out my previous monthly release book posts and podcast episodes for even more amazing titles that I highly recommend. But before we get to my top 10 list for November, I wanted to tell you about a book that releases tomorrow that you're going to want to get on your TBR list, and that's Icebreaker by Kat Mazzara and Elise Faber. Sometimes a kiss is just a kiss. Other times, it's so much more. Aspen may think she doesn't want me, but I'll do anything to make her mine. Fall in love with the book that New York Times author Carrie Ann Ryan says she stayed up all night to finish. Icebreaker is an enemies to lovers, he falls first hockey romance that will have you swooning over protective hero Banks Christensen. When a case of mistaken identity at the arena door leads to chance meeting after chance meeting, Aspen finds herself falling hard and fast. But will she allow Banks to steal her heart, or will the past keep this couple apart? Find out in Icebreaker by Kat Mazzara and Elise Faber now. Available on all platforms. Now, you know that I do love a great hockey romance. So now that Icebreaker is on my list to read this month, let's dive into what other titles I'm interested in reading this November, starting with A Tribute of Fire by Soraya Wilson. This is a new romantasy that releases on November 1st, and here is what it's about. Leah is the princess of Lokris, a dying desert nation cursed centuries ago by an earth goddess, one still worshipped by the thriving and adversarial nation of Ilion. Every year, Ilion offers the goddess a sacrifice. 2 Locrian maidens forced to compete in a dangerous race to reach her temple. In a millennium, no maiden has made it out of Ilion alive. This year, Leah is one of the hunted. An education in battle gives her a fighting chance. But the challenges are greater than she feared. Leah's beloved but untrained sister, Quinn, has been put in the path of danger. And if the risks weren't significant enough, Leah is reluctantly drawn to the commandingly attractive Jason, an Elorian sailor she loathes to trust and desires like no man before. The tribute game is on. It's up to Leah to lift the goddess's curse, restore Locris to its former glory, and change the fate of every young woman destined to follow in her past. Whoa, a lot going on with this romantasy, but I can say I actually just finished it. I had an advanced reader copy, and it was everything that I had hoped for. It will definitely get your heart pumping in more ways than one. The beginning had me sort of reminiscing of everything that I loved about the Hunger Games, with Leah sacrificing herself and trying to reach the temple in her epic chase through the labyrinth. But I would say the best part, however, was her amazing chemistry with Jason, the supposed Ilian sailor. I loved the happy-go-lucky air about him, and their banter was just like top notch for this book. There's definitely more than meets the eye when it comes to him, though, and I cannot wait to see what transpires in book 2, which I really hope drops next year. So I highly recommend A Tribute of Fire this month. All right, the next book I recommend, and that's on my TBR list, is Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This is an enemies to lovers romance that releases on November 5th, and here is what it's about. Teddy Anderson doesn't have a plan. She's never needed one before. She's always been more of a go-with-the-flow type of girl, but for some reason the flow doesn't seem to be going her way this time. Suddenly, everything feels like it's starting to change, and she feels like she's getting left behind. Gus Ryder has a lot on his plate. He doesn't know what's harder, taking care of his family's 8,000-acre ranch or parenting his spunky 6-year-old daughter who is staying with him for the summer. Gus has always been the dependable one, but when his workload starts to overwhelm him, he has to admit that he can't manage everything on his own. His little sister's best friend, the woman he can't stand, is not who he had in mind. Tempers flare, tension builds, and for the first time ever, Gus and Teddy start to see each other in a different light. As new feelings start to simmer below the surface, they must decide whether they should act on them. Can they keep things cool, or will both of them get burned? So this is Sage's next book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, based on a small town with delicious cowboys. I have been waiting for Gus and Teddy's story because their animosity toward each other has been no secret, honestly, in the previous book, and it's just so good. But you definitely know that something is under the surface, so I'm excited to see how these two opposites and enemies finally become lovers in this new release for what's been a really fun and popular series. So check out Lost and Lassoed when it releases on November 5th. The next book on my list also releases November 5th, and it is My Darling Jane by Ilsa Madden Mills, and this is a sports romance that she is so well known for, and here is what it's about. On an ordinary day, Jane Darling would not be in a sports bar wearing a toga with angel wings, but she's desperate to launch her matchmaking business to secure her young daughter's future. Her mission to attract new clients at any cost. Her Cupid outfit catches the eye of New York's beloved star quarterback, Jasper Janik. She and Jasper have always clashed, but he offers a tantalizing proposal to be Cupid Era's premier client. As she sets him up on date after date, it grows clear that Jane's the only woman he wants. She's not interested, but her heart has been burned before. He's ready to make the pass. Is his darling ready to catch it? I don't know what it is, honestly, about the Playboy quarterback falling for the struggling single mom storyline that I like so much, but I honestly eat it up every time. I love that he falls first in this romance about a wannabe matchmaker getting her own happily ever after. Ilsa Madden Mills writes just delicious sports heroes, so I'm really hoping that this is going to be a super fun read this November. Moving on to another new release that drops November 5th is Hexed by Emily McIntyre, and this is a new mafia romance, and here is what it's about. Vanessa Anderson has never been good, but always dutiful to the uncle who took her in. When her runaway cousin returns to their coastal southern town, she brings a man with her, and Vanessa soon realizes he's the only one who's ever seen her for her. There's just one problem. She can never have him. Enzo, loverboy Marino, is a wealthy businessman by day and prince of the underworld by night. underboss to a notorious mafia syndicate, he answers to no one except his father, the strongest Don in the Northeast. When he's tasked with marriage, Enzo doesn't think twice until he meets his fiance's cousin. Ooh, okay, we've got a little forbidden romance here, but I haven't dived into McIntyre's Never After series, but I love how she writes fractured fairy tales inspired by different villains. They are dark romances and complete standalones, so I think I'm ready to dive into this one where the hero is tempted by a woman he can't have because he's engaged to another, and not just any other, but her cousin. So, gosh, I hope it brings on this irresistible chemistry, forbidden desires, and hopefully the spice. I know that Emily McIntyre has been through quite a ride with her health recently, so I'm really happy to support her with this latest release, Hexed, on November 5th. So go check it out in the entire Never After series. Another new release dropping on November 5th, gosh, that's going to be such a busy day, is Mistletoe Mischief by Cody Hall, which is a holiday romance, and here is what it's about. In need of a distraction from his dumpster fire of a love life, adventure tour guide Pike Sutton is thrilled when his favorite travel podcaster accepts an invitation to experience the festive charms of Mistletoe, Idaho. He knows her visit will mean great things for the business he shares with his friend Anthony, but Pike has no idea that the real force behind exposures is nothing like what he sees on social media. Ryler Perkins is perfectly happy being the voice behind the microphone while her cousin stars as the face of their popular podcast. She's used to men drooling all over Aaliyah, but for once she finds herself wishing a certain hot hipster lumberjack would notice her instead. Maybe that's why Ryler completely loses her mind and makes a move on Pike. Their kiss under the mistletoe is more than steamy, but it abruptly ends when Pike discovers he's been smooching Aaliyah's assistant. He isn't about to jeopardize everything by seducing a woman who's off limits. But as Pike guides the podcast crew around town and into the great outdoors, Ryler seems determined to get him hotter under the collar than a steaming cup of cocoa. So this is super cute. Cody Hall is all about holiday romance books, so I think it's high time that I read one. And maybe not just one this year, as she has 3 new releases dropping this fall in her Falling in Mistletoe series. I love that this holiday romance is based on a case of mistaken identity, which hopefully will lead to a really fun rom-com adventure. I'm already loving that it will bring 2 unique characters together, an adventure tour guide and a podcaster. So here's hoping that this new release is a holiday romance keeper. Okay, moving on from November 5th to the next week, dropping on November 12th, is the new release, A Queen's Game by Katharine McGee. And here is what it is about. In the last glittering decade of European empires, courts, and kings, 3 young women are on a collision course with history and with each other. Alex of Hesse is Queen Victoria's favorite granddaughter, so she can expect to end up with a prince, except that the prince she's falling for is not the one she's supposed to marry. Helene d'Orleans, daughter of the exiled King of France, doesn't mind being a former princess. It gives her more opportunity to break the rules, like running around with the handsome, charming, and very much off-limits heir to the British throne, Prince Eddie. Then there's May of Teck. After spending her entire life on the fringes of the royal world, May is determined to marry a prince, and not just any prince, but the future king. So I actually haven't read McGee's popular American royal series, so I think I might start off with this royal romance that is a historical romance inspired by true events, which I think is pretty cool. I'm ready to get lost in the Victorian era, where 3 princesses are struggling to find love and hopefully get the happily ever after that's right for them. I'm intrigued to see how conniving they might be, since they might be vying for the same man. But I'm also curious as to what makes the heroes of this story tick and what they bring to the match beyond their titles. So that is A Queen's Game, dropping on November 12th. Another book that I know is going to be on a lot of people's TBR list this month is Variation by Rebecca Yarros. This is her latest contemporary romance that is going to release on November 19th. And here is what it's about. Elite ballerina Allie Rousseau is no stranger to pressure. With her mother's eyes always watching, perfection was expected no matter the cost. But when an injury jeopardizes all she sacrificed for, Allie returns to her summer home to heal and recover. But the memories she's tried to forget rush in and threaten to take her under. As a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, Hudson Ellis knows that hesitation can mean the difference between life and death. He's always prided himself on being in the right place at the right time, especially when it came to Allie Rousseau, until the night he left for basic. After the biggest regret of his life, the secrets he keeps mean he can never be with the one woman he wants more than his next breath. When Hudson's niece shows up on Allie's doorstep, desperate to find her birth mother, Allie finds herself in an unimaginable position. Allie and Hudson's past and present might be endlessly complicated. The thread that tied them to each other all those years ago may have unraveled, but the truth could pull them back together or drive them apart forever. So I know we are all counting down until the release of Onyx Storm this coming January to continue the Fourth Wing series, but I'm really anxious to read Yaris's new release this month. I fell completely in love with her last contemporary romance, In the Likely Event, so my expectations are pretty high for this one. I love that it's about a ballerina and a Coast Guard rescue swimmer because those are kind of pretty unique characteristics. And I'm curious about the family secrets that get uncovered, though I kind of have a inkling of, I think I understand what's at play here, but we shall see. So November 19th, I will be reading Variation by Rebecca Yarros. All right, next up, also releasing November 19th, is A Legend in the Baking by Jamie Wesley, and this is a brother's best friend romance, and here is what it's about. August Hodges was supposed to be the silent partner in Sugar Blitz Cupcakes. That is until his impromptu feminist rant about how women bakers are the backbone of the industry, and baking cupcakes isn't a threat to masculinity goes viral, making him the hottest bachelor in town. With a new location in the works, August and his partners decide to capitalize on this perfect opportunity to help cement their place in the community. But the hiring of his best friend's younger sister, the woman who has haunted some of his best dreams for years, was as much of a shock as his newfound fame. Social media manager Sloan Dell fell hard for her brother's best friend the moment she met him, more than a decade ago. But that teenage infatuation cost her dearly. Still, she accepts her brother's request to revamp the bakery's social media presence, knowing it's the big break her fledgling career needs. They vow to leave the past in the past, but when a hot makeout session makes it clear their attraction burns hotter than ever, Sloan and August are forced to reconsider what it means to take a risk and chase your dreams. Yeah, so this one pretty much had me at cupcake baking football player. Not gonna lie. But the tension of their, forbidden attraction is also a really big appeal. I love a good brother's best friend romance when done right. So I'm excited to dive into my advanced reader copy of this book, hopefully very soon, to see how these two try and ignore their chemistry together in the name of cupcake success. I'm super excited that I'm going to have Jamie Wesley on the podcast. So definitely stay tuned for an upcoming episode later in November to hear more about this book, I should say, and her writing, which will be a lot of fun. Okay, next up on my TBR list for November 2024 is The Jewel of the Isle by Carrie Ray, which is a contemporary romance releasing on November 26th. And here is what it's about. Emily Edwards is determined to fulfill her late father's national park bucket list, starting with Isle Royale National Park, home to wolves, bears, and 100-year-old shipwrecks. She has no choice but to hire a tour guide, and there is only one that isn't book solid. Ryder Fleet, co-owner of Fleet Outdoor Adventures, won't call himself a wilderness expert since he's always been the marketing half of the adventure guide business he once shared with his late brother. But how hard could it be to lead one gorgeous woman up a mountain or two? Pretty hard, actually. Emily's perfectly planned trek turns disastrous when she and Ryder witness a brutal crime and are suddenly forced to evade a group of archaeologists on the hunt for a jewel. As they spend nights together too close for comfort, they realize their shoddily built fire isn't the only thing that's kindling, and that they must trust each other if they want to escape the island with their lives and hearts intact. So I was am completely a child of the 80s, and I fell in love with the movie The Jewel of the Nile, which was the sequel to Romancing the Stone. It was and is really a hilarious adventure mixed with a romance that was just perfection in my mind between actors Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. I love that Ray is using that movie as inspiration to what is surely going to be a super fun rom-com to read this month. It's super fun when two clueless people get themselves mixed up with some not so nice people, all the while they are falling for one another while really just trying to stay out of danger. So I'm pretty excited to pick up The Jewel of the Isle this month. Okay, last up on my list is the new romance book release, Church Girl by Nema Simone, which is a nanny romance, and it also releases November 26th. And here is what it's about. Aaliyah Montgomery isn't just ditching her wedding, she's also fleeing her suffocating small town and her family's expectations. She's got plans for college, for finding herself, but landing a job in Chicago that fits her schedule isn't easy. Good thing Vaughn Howard is desperate to find a live-in nanny. Bad thing that he's a gritty, grumpy, gorgeous tattoo artist carrying as much baggage as he has ink. Vaughn's new hire is inexperienced and a fire hazard in the kitchen. She's also all thick curls, thicker curves, and a distracting mix of innocence and sensuality. After the upheaval of a divorce, he just needs a nanny, not a sneaky link. Meanwhile, Aaliyah is bonding with his 7-year-old and showing an unexpected flair for tattoo art. Who could resist? Yet deep down, Aaliyah's still running from her feelings and her fear of losing herself to someone else's expectations again. Even as their past returned to haunt them, their undeniable heat says maybe it's time to stand for and fight for a love they didn't see coming. I think that this is definitely the new release to introduce me to Harlequin's Afterglow imprint. I love that Aaliyah is a runaway bride determined to pursue the plans that she wants and not what others want for her. And lucky for her, those plans land her with a really hot tattoo artist who supposedly has a really dirty mouth. So I am completely down for it because I am obsessed with dirty talkers. So I'm going to be reading Church Girl by Nema Simone this month. And so I'm going to wrap up today's episode. Those were my top 10 books, but I'm going to wrap up today with a reminder that you have 2 weeks left, only 2 weeks, to snag my Halloween-inspired romance fill-in story that is a, spicy Mad Lib for adults about an epic Halloween party you won't soon forget. It's free to download from my website, but again, only for the next 2 weeks and then it'll be gone. I'll include a link to it in the show notes so you can snag it and then fill in your answers and see what kind of spicy story you can create. While you're at shereadsromancebooks.com, you can always go to my freebie page there and snag all of my free goodies, in addition to this Mad Lib story, including a reading log bookmark that is perfect to write all of the titles that I shared in today's episode, as well as a romance book bingo sheet, my top 10 book boyfriend list, and so much more. So definitely go check out my freebie page on She Reads Romance Books so you can snag everything. So much goodness to share. I love it. And one last thing, I would say if you liked this episode, any of my episodes, I'd so love it if you would give a rating or a review on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast platform, as it tells me that you want more and it really helps me to get in front of more readers. So thank you for doing that in advance. I really, really appreciate it. And that wraps up today's episode. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, happy reading this week because life is better with a love story.
That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.